Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, Solo ReacTalk. Tonight, I am going to be reacting to WARZONE ORGVAYR. Yeah, ORGVAYR or ORGVAYR. Yes, sorry. Leagues of VOTANN by Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer. Yes, I'm continuing on with the Leagues of VOTANN with Baldermort. Remember, guys, if you want to check out my previous reactions to the other Leagues of VOTANN videos made by Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer, the playlist card is going to be at the top. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, it's good to be back. It's really good to be back.
WARZONE ORGVAYR. The emergence of the Great Rift shook the Leagues of VOTANN to their foundations. Hordes vanished amidst the roiling energies of the Warpstorm Belt. Trade routes were severed. Many kindreds were compelled to relocate their holdings, abandoning territories held for thousands of years, and venturing out from the galactic core to seek more stable regions to settle.
Are they fighting against like chaos demons? Are they fighting against, creatures from the warp? Or is it another xeno race in particular? But I think it is something from the warp, yeah.
Both within the core and beyond its fringes, the Rift's advent has driven the kin into new conflicts, as well as stirring up old foes and settling them on a collision course with the Leagues. The kin do not recognize or name the Great Rift as a single manifest phenomena. They believe that to do so would lend further superstitious menace to a threat that is already menacing enough. They choose instead to name the greatest of the component warp storms that have opened within the galactic core, treating each as a separate peril to be weathered and overcome.
That's interesting, and that's actually kind of good, compared to if I were to say the Imperium of Man, how they would name, the Eye of Terror as this one monolith entity, or should I say like a galactic superstructure that just exists in the galaxy, and they tend to fear it, they tend to avoid it because yes, the threats coming from the Eye of Terror are legitimate. Yes, I'm not going to downplay it, but they should not see it as something that they should be staying clear of. They should try and face it. They should try and find ways of defeating it. It will be hard for them to do it because they'll be susceptible to corruption, to being controlled by chaos demons and all other forms of warp entities, right? But with the kin of the Leagues of VOTANN, they are not susceptible to warp entities, and they're not susceptible to any form of influence from the chaos gods as much as rest of humanity. And the fact that they try to break it down in a pragmatic form, instead of seeing it as something that should be fearing, they're seeing it as something that they should conquer bit by bit. That's very, very important. That it's even more important than their genetic strength point, where they are not being able to be susceptible to warp influences. That is already a bonus, but what's the most important thing is the mindset of thinking of this situation in a pragmatic kind of way, and try to deal with it bit by bit, instead of looking at it as just this huge threat that they cannot avoid. So yeah, I like that about the Leagues of Votann as well. Yeah, it's good.
One such raging empiric maelstrom opened upon the northeastern fringe of Greater Thurian League space, and was soon named Orgvayr, roughly translated in High Gothic as the Ogre. The Void Strider kindred and Lakria's kindred were swallowed up in the instant of its opening. Their pan-spectral arrays gave some small forewarning, and so ragged flotillas of kin refugee ships limped from the fringes of Orgvayr days after its emergence, their passengers telling of holds dissolved into raw madness or overrun by howling demons. Close on their heels came ravening chaos war fleets, sailing the void in baroque warships and monstrous hulks. They fell upon the Greater Thurian system bordering the storm zone. As more chaos worshippers poured out of Orgvayr by the day, it became clear to the Greater Thurian League that a terrible new threat had been unleashed upon their holds. Those kindreds whose holds lay directly in the invaders' path now faced a difficult choice: to hold their ground against the onslaught, or to fall back in the face of growing enemy strength. Exchanging messages as best they could via hardened LASCOM relays, the hearthspakes of the Deep Rock kindred, the kindred of VOTANN, Karl's Starbreaker kindred, and kindred Crimson II, all elected to hold fast. The grim
LASCOM relays. Interesting. They don't use astropaths, and they have that capability, right, to create a specific kin that is attuned to the warp. So I'm surprised that they're not using, those ones that are attuned to the warp as astropaths for faster than light communication between the different leagues of Votann, because here they're using LASCOM relays. Essentially, it's just a laser communicator, right? So they're using lasers to communicate from one point in space to the next, and lasers still move at the speed of light. So it will take a considerable amount of time for that light to reach the next relay station, right? Maybe I'm wrong about that. In the comment section, you guys can correct me. But I find it interesting that they're not using astropaths for something like this.
Interfaced in their fanes with the Greater Thurian Votann, asking that it communicate their plight to the wider League and begging its advice. Swift merchant craft and scout ships plunged into the warp, bearing the same messages to neighbouring kindreds. Those facing the invasion would stand firm until the will of the Votann and the League could be made known, or until their defiance was judged too costly to maintain. Meanwhile, the ravening hordes of chaos blazed a trail of havoc towards the hold worlds that lay in their path. By a stroke of good fortune, Karl Uthar, the Destined, had recently returned to Obsid Gate, hold of his own kindred of Votann. Ever the dynamic hero of his people, Uthar convinced the kindred of Votann Hearthspeak that they could not afford to simply mass behind their defences and await their enemy's onslaught. To do so handed all strategic initiative and opportunity to the invaders, and would abandon outlying facilities, resources, and personnel to their murderous attentions. The voice of the Destined carried great weight amongst his kindred, who were swiftly convinced by his arguments. Thus, their mustered kin-host broke into a number of oath bands. Some would remain to garrison Obsid Gate, while the rest would sally forth under the command of Uthar and several other prominent heroes to launch counterattacks against the incoming Chaos invaders. Their role would be to slow the enemy wherever possible, to evacuate all resources, kin and ironkin they could, and to destroy any facilities they could not rescue so as to deny their use to the foe. Uthar the Destined's Oathband deployed to the outlying world of Torg. Riven by years of deep-core tectonic mining, Torg was a hostile mass of jagged stone, exposed magma veins, convulsing supervolcanoes, and kin harvester fortresses wreathed in toxic fumes. Several immense renegade warships had already settled in the vulnerable world's orbit and disgorged warbands of heretic Astartes to the surface. Mutated Chaos Marines of the Purge and ferocious, corn-worshipping world-eaters had overrun Torg's void docks and cut bands of guild miners off within their harvester fortresses.
It just had to be the corn, Chaos Marines. Okay. Yikes.
Swiftly casting the eye of the ancestors over the direct strategic situation, Uthar formulated his battle plan and set his forces into motion without delay.
But actually, you know what? Maybe that's a good thing, because I don't like, the Nurgle Chaos Marines. I don't like how they look. I don't like how they have these over-bloated bodies with pus and all this pestilence and stuff. It's just disgusting. So I guess I'll choose them. I'll choose them. They're better than those that follow Papa Nurgle, as they call him. So yeah, I'm sure you guys can defeat the World Eaters or push them back. Hopefully. Yeah, let's continue.
In the void, the ships of Uthar's Oathband engaged the craft of the Chaos Worshippers at the command of Void Master Hemik. Their mighty conversion beam batteries and salvos of drill torpedoes mauled the Grand Cruiser Abomination and forced other Chaos warships to break off orbital bombardment in order to respond.
Interesting. Drill torpedoes. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm also quite, invested into knowing what types of weapons the Leagues of Votann use. Do they also use energy-based weapons and a mixture with projectile weapons? Like how the Imperium of Man, they have their las turrets, they have their bolter broadside ship cannons as well, and they have their torpedoes as well. So I'm also wondering, does the League of Votann follow the same path, using a mixture of both energy-based weapons as well as projectile types of weapons? And do they have, further exotic types of weapons? Like in the golden age of technology, mankind had very powerful, very exotic types of weaponry systems. They could form black holes out of nothing. They could use the warp in ways that, just didn't seem understandable. It was just beyond comprehension. So I'm just wondering whether the technology from those ages back are still being used by the Leagues of Votann, or like the Imperium of Man, they have, kind of degraded in the types of weapons that they use because of the amount of time that has passed, and thus, leading to knowledge being lost about how to create these types of weapons. Yeah, I'm just wondering about that.
Hemik coordinated her small but potent fleet with consummate skill, fending off each assault by the Chaos Worshippers and handing out far worse punishment than her own ships suffered. Nox Hernkin pioneer bands, supported by light gunships and rugged Sagittar ATVs, swept through the high passes of the Fumarok Range to attack the World Eaters from the rear. They launched swift hit-and-run strikes, using their pan-spectral scanners to maintain a fix on their enemies amidst the toxic murk. Goaded to action, many wrath-crazed Khorne berserkers broke off their assault on Harvester Fortress 5 and pursued Nox bands into the hazardous passes. Separating into several smaller Oath bands, Uthar the Destined's forces launched a massive drop offensive into the Shatterfields. Uthar himself led an armoured spearhead against the World Eaters of Lord Hakatar. Karlsek Thurken and her Oath band met the Purge head-on. As orbital fire from both sides rained down, the two swirling battles erupted into a storm of close-range firefights and brutal offensives. While the foe were engaged to the north, Grimnir Khorne led an elite force of Einhir and Harskin to evacuate the Chthonians at Harvester Fortresses 2, 3, and 4. Guildkin and great quantities of raw materials were loaded aboard Hecaton land fortresses and the armoured carriages they drew behind them. Sensing their prey escaping, Earthak Skullripper led a massed teleport assault of World Eater Terminators that cut the Grimnir and her bodyguards off, even as kin forces were pulling out.
Okay, before we continue, I just want to say why? Why have such horns coming out? Is this a Terminator? I think this is a Terminator World Eater. Okay. I mean, like, how do you even move with such... Whatever, exaggerate yourselves.
Though many Chthonian berserkers turned back to hurl themselves into the fight, the living ancestor could not be rescued. The surviving Chthonians and many of the Hearthkin have since formed the grudge band of Khorne. They will be avenged upon Earthak Skullripper, or die trying. Uthar the Destined met Hakatar of the World Eaters upon the stone span bridging the Chasm of Embers. The two warriors battled back and forth along the crumbling expanse as their warriors fought and died around them, and pillars of volcanic fire blasted up from below. Wounded but unbowed, Uthar at last wrong-footed his foe, taking the World Eater's right leg off with a vicious sweep and pitching him, still howling with fury, into the flames below. After several hours of rapid armoured warfare, and with the vast majority of kin assets ferried successfully up to his waiting void ships, Karl Uthar commanded a full retreat from Torg. Howled accusations of cowardice from the Khorne worshippers followed the retreat. They meant nothing to the kin.
Yeah, that means nothing to them. They're not like the Imperium of Men. They don't fight for this imaginary honor of your guys. No. They're very pragmatic. They are here to get what is there on their territory, get it out as soon as possible, and destroy everything else. But yes, they wanted to defend their homes, which is within their rights. It's the right thing to do. However, they have been given an alternative, plan from that. And yes, it's still very pragmatic, very good to do. So here, fighting till the bitter end with the World Eaters, it's just not feasible, it's not logical, it's just a waste, Live to fight another day. Yeah. World Eaters, you guys can scream all you want saying that they're cowards, it's fine. It's fine.
All that was worth extracting from the planet had been recovered, and any remaining assets were deemed not worth the cost in lives to salvage. The Great Arthurian League Oathbands fell back in good order, Voidmaster Hemmick giving the enemy flotilla a last devastating volley to scatter their formations before commanding a plunge back into warp space. The tragic death of Grimnir Khorne aside, the Torg offensive had proved successful, but the wider warzone Orgvayr was becoming more fraught and violent by the hour. A great battle lay before the Great Thurian League, and Uthar the Destined would be needed elsewhere. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. A swift reminder about our other channels, links in the description. I hope you have enjoyed this brief introduction, and will be joining me over the week as we explore this rich and fascinating new faction. And thank you for your precious time. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.
Okay, guys, that was Warzone Orgvayr, Leagues of Votann by Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer. Yes, we've just been given like an open view of how the Leagues of Votann conduct their battles against any type of foe. Well, in particular, this time it's the Chaos Marines, the World Eaters, and they don't have the vast amount of human capital or human resources that the Imperium of Men have. You know, there's not millions upon billions of them, you know, on different planets or planetoids, or, you know, inhabiting space stations and stuff like that. There's not billions upon billions of them. There are, you know, hundreds of thousands, maybe even a million or so, or maybe 2 or 3 million of the kin, but, you know, they're not in such numbers that they'll be able to defend planets indefinitely, you know. And the Chaos Marines were pushing in their territory, and the different types of leagues that were, you know, trapped in this ORGVAYR space, if I can say that, you know, those that were trapped in that warp storm, if I can also call it that, you know, they have been trying their best to keep their territory safe from any type of threat that comes from the warp. And, you know, they tried their best. It's just that they are outnumbered. They are dealing with a threat that is just unbelievably terrifying and relentless. And, you know, they just don't stop. World Eaters, they just don't stop. They enjoy the thrill of battle. They are living for that thrill of battle. They do everything for the appeasement of their god Khorne. And, you know, it was just going to be very difficult for them to defend their territory. So yes, what's his name again? Karl Uther had suggested that, you know, they should destroy what they cannot take, you know, evacuate these positions that they hold, and, you know, leave the system as soon as possible, you know, and fight another day. You know, that was a very good idea from Karl Uther, because, you know, these guys were going to be annihilated. Maybe, you know, they're going to be annihilated by the World Eaters. So yeah, we got to see how they conduct their war against, you know, creatures from the Inmaterion, and we also got to see how they communicate with las com buoy relays. Yeah, that was quite interesting. Like I said before, I thought maybe they would use astropaths for communication, like the Imperium of Man, but they use, you know, laser points to communicate with one another. And yeah, I find that quite interesting, really. But yeah, this was interesting. This was really, really interesting. But essentially, they're being pushed back, you know, from their territories. They're being pushed back, and they're fighting a war with these Chaos Marines without the Imperium of Man knowing, you know. They don't know anything about what's going on in the galactic core, and it seems like it's only going to be the leagues of VOTANN that are going to be fighting against the Chaos Marines alone in that part of the galactic space, if I can say that. And yeah, I'm just wondering how long will they be able to hold out until maybe they're going to be needing assistance from the Imperium of Man, or maybe they might not ever need them. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. But yeah, guys, this was good. This was really, really good. Remember, guys, if you want to check out the original video as well as Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer, the YouTube link and the video link are in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you guys next week. Whew, I'm still, you know, getting back into it. I'm still a bit nervous, but yeah, it's good to be back, and let's hope that the year 2023 is going to be a good one for all of us. Okay, guys, good night.